Howdy. Well, this is your
hello.
channel. Yeah.
So, hello, everyone. I am here at the abode of Jason Cooper of Old Books Chapter Verse. It is also the abode of Kelly of Books I'm Not Reading.
Correct.
I'm visiting for a few days. Yeah, Kelly left yesterday. Well, we dropped her off somewhere yesterday, but anyway. So it's just Jason and I hanging out, and yeah, I have acquired a bunch of books in the past couple days because that's the thing I do. Kelly and Jason had like a closet with some books that they were going to get rid of that they just sort of let me look through and take what I wished, and I did. And I took 16 books. And then Jason took me to a local used bookstore where I spent too much money and acquired a lot of books.
It was fun.
Yeah.
I bought one book.
Yeah.
Lukash bought many.
Yeah. And yeah, we thought we would share the books we have. And Jason has acquired books as well. He just got some books in the mail.
Yeah, I just got some books in the mail, and I had a small stack of books that I've hauled, or acquired, let's say, in the last couple of months that I was kind of setting aside for a haul video. And this was a perfect opportunity to haul them on camera with a friend. So.
Yeah. Well, I think you're beginning.
Okay. So the book that I bought while Lukash was buying more than he's gonna feel good about tomorrow, maybe. The book that I bought was Smoke Gets in Your Eyes and Other Lessons from the Crematory by Caitlin Doty, a memoir. And it's a memoir that I had thought about actually including in my You Carry a Coffin project. But regardless, even though I'm not reading it with that project, it falls right in line with that, which is obviously an interest of mine. So, yeah, so that's my first book.
Okay. And yeah, so I have no particular order I'm doing mine in. So if I'm surprised by the books I picked up, don't be surprised. But this first book is April 1865, The Month That Saved America by J. Wink. Which is a history of, I guess, April 1865 in the Civil War. Yeah, I'm woefully underversed in the Civil War. Actually, we had a moment the other day where I told Kelly and Jason that I had not seen the Ken Burns documentary, and they were both appalled. Not really, but... So anyway, yeah, I grabbed this from Kelly and Jason's pile of unwanted books, because it might be a good primer, I suppose, so yeah.
So the next book that I will show is a book that I got from Book Depository recently. And so Kelly and I already owned Plainsong and Benediction, which are the first and third books in this kind of loose trilogy of Kent Harris. So we bought the middle book, Eventide. And I should probably read Plainsong before I read this, but they don't need to be read in order since I've already read the third book. I suppose it doesn't matter if I read the second book before I read the first book, but anyway, yeah, if you haven't read Kent Harris yet, you've heard Kelly and I talking a lot about him, you must. So, that's my next book.
My next book is weird for me, I don't know, it's The Road to Character by David Brooks, and I think this is like a collection of columns that he wrote for like a magazine or a newspaper. But yeah, I mean the title...
Yeah, little Kelly here.
So it's kind of, yeah, I don't know, the title seems pretty self-explanatory, but I think he talks about a bunch of different, like, philosophers and thinkers and writers, and how they tell you how to build character, I suppose, and I don't know, I thought it might be interesting. But yeah, anyway.
And my next book is another one I got from Book Depository. And so after reading this Republic of Suffering and just reading about Emily Dickinson's relationship with the war, I decided to finally go ahead and get this book I've been wanting for a while now. It's called White Heat, The Friendship of Emily Dickinson and Thomas Wentworth Higginson by Brenda Wineapple. And this is just about her friendship with this guy who I think was a Civil War general? I'm not sure. No, he was a literary figure who ran guns to Kansas and commanded the 1st Union Regiment of Black Soldiers. Anyway, and they had a close friendship, it sounds like, and I've just been interested in this for quite some time. It was a finalist for the National Book Critics Circle Award for nonfiction the year it was published.
All right. So this next one is a novel that I sort of picked up. I grabbed from Kelly and Jason's pile. I don't actually know much about it, but it's called The Meadow by James Galvin. I almost said Galvin. And basically, I got interested because it's a novel that takes place in Wyoming. That's a very superficial reason to pick up a novel, but I think you recommended it too.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Okay. So I have a stamp of approval. So yeah.
And then the next one is a book that was sent to me by Steve Donahue, and this is published by Princeton, and this is The Birth of Modern Belief, Faith and Judgment from the Middle Ages to the Enlightenment by Ethan Shagan. And I don't know very much about it, although I suppose the title and subtitle kind of tell the whole story, everything we need to know. But yeah, thank you, Steve, again for sending this to me.
All right, and next one is kind of a weird one for me. It's The 13 and a Half Lives of Captain Bluebeard. Bluebear, sorry, not Bluebeard. And it's by Walter Moores, I'm not sure. But anyway, it sounds like a really fun little story about this little creature who, like, lives 13 and a half lives. He literally, I think, like, lives a life and then dies and comes back to life. And just sort of a lot of, like, sort of fantastical tales associated with him and the people he meets and the weird creatures he meets. And it's, like, illustrated, too. It's, like, Jason said it wasn't a children's book, so I guess it's not a children's book, even though it kind of looks like one. But anyway, it sounds like it'll be a pretty light read, which will be a nice refresher at some point, I suppose.
How long is that? Is that a Mammoth?
Nope. It's just about 700 pages.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. So it's like a Mammoth-like tome.
Yeah.
So the next book is a Folio Society edition that I bought, and this is a book that I first read about in the Guardian. Who the hell was I think it was Robert McFarlane maybe who wrote about this and called it one of the great works of nature writing that he'd ever read, and it's nonfiction, and it is called Ring of Bright Water by Gavin Maxwell, and it's about a man in England in the mid 20th century, I think, who lived in this just little village in England next to a river, and this kind of family of otters decided they liked hanging out with him, and so they spent quite a lot of time with him. And this is the book that he wrote about his experiences with the otters. And like every folio book, I mean, it's absolutely gorgeous. The end papers are beautiful. It's got photographs in it of his home, and many photographs of the otters as well. So yeah,
that looks good.
Ring of Bright Water.
Yeah, so next one, completely different note, is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. This is a lovely volume. I forget, is this Modern Library who publishes these? Or?
I think that was Penguin. I think Penguin hardcovers.
Yeah, Penguin Classics. So yeah, anyway, it's a classic that I haven't read and would like to. So yeah, actually, side note, one reason I'm sort of starting to get possibly more interested in Oscar Wilde is because James Merrill loved Oscar Wilde, so yeah. Anyway.
And that was a book, we were talking about, Lukash and I were talking about library bag sales earlier, and that was a book that I got at the bag sale. So that book was probably, when all was said and done and the numbers were crunched, it was probably purchased for like 15 cents. So yeah, very cool. And this is a book I have wanted since graduate school. And I finally broke down and bought it. It's pricey. It's a paperback. It's like $40. And this is The Healing End, the Saxon Gospel. And it is translated by G. Ronald Murphy, who is a Jesuit. And so basically what this is, right, so, God, when was this set? Over 1,000 years ago. And so, Christians were looking to convert the Germanic peoples, but the gospel stories didn't really kind of make sense. They didn't really chime with the Germanic people's understanding of the world. And so the Healing End is the version, they call it the Saxon Gospel. It's the version of the gospel that was given to, or used to kind of convert these Germanic peoples. And so in this version of the gospel, Christ is a chieftain. Bethlehem is a hill fort, And I first learned about this in a Christology class I took in grad school, and everything my professor said about it just made it sound insanely good. And so I finally broke down all these years later and purchased it. So that's the Heliod.
Nice. Yeah, that sounds super interesting. Yeah, anyway, next is also an old book. So this is The Treasure of the City of Ladies by Christine de Pizan. So this is a medieval work of literature, and Christine de Pizan, actually when I first grabbed this from the pile of Kelly and Jason's books, I thought it was a different book. So Christine de Pizan is really well known for a book called The Book of the City of Ladies, and this is The Treasure of the City of Ladies. So The Book of the City of Ladies is a book about it's sort of a response to the misogyny at the times when she was alive in the Middle Ages, and she sort of talks about a lot of famous women I think the famous women all appear for like a dinner party or something, and she talks about how women have been important in society and how they're basically it's a response to sexism and just showing that women have value. What a thought, right? But anyway, The Treasure of the City of Ladies is a sequel to that, where she, as I understand it, is sort of writing sort of a self-help book for women, how to be good and virtuous, I suppose. So yeah, I don't know. The other book is supposed to be sort of a proto-feminist kind of text. The way that this one is sounding doesn't sound quite as like feminist, but it might. I don't know. I don't know much about it, but anyway, yeah.
When was that written?
1300s, I think. Oh no, 1500s. Yeah, sometime in the 1500s.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah. Very cool. So my next book is the third and final novel in Mary Renault's Alexander the Great series, and this is Funeral Games. And I'm going to be reading the second volume in the series, The Persian Boy, with Elena Makridna this summer as a buddy read. So once that is done, then I will have the third volume waiting for me. Which could be a buddy read down the road too, I suppose. Anyway, yeah. We at the used bookstore today. We were looking for the first book in this series for Lukash, and they didn't have it. They had the second book and the third book, and they had like her Bull from the Sea novels, and maybe like one other novel. But yeah, surprisingly they didn't have the first one. Yeah, it was like cool. I love that corner of that bookstore. Yeah, I have to visit that corner more often.
Yeah. So this next book is one I've already read. It's The Solace of Open Spaces by Gretel Ehrlich. So yeah, I talked about this in a video a while back. I had a whole sort of, not gush, but anyway, I really liked it and found it very interesting. So it's a series of essays just about, basically about Wyoming, and just her time living out here in Wyoming, and yeah, and I just really liked it. And it's just, I don't know, a beautiful piece of nature writing, I suppose. And I hope to reread it in the not too distant future. So yeah.
I think she still lives in Wyoming too.
Oh really?
I think, yeah. And she wrote a book just a couple of years ago. She was a finalist for, I want to say for either the National Book Award or the National Book Critics Circle Award for nonfiction for a book that she wrote about the Japanese tsunami. I think. Yeah, I can't remember what it's called, but
cool.
Anyway, so the next three books I'll be talking about one at a time are the Library of America books that I recently got, because I was having such trouble with Library of America, and I just decided, you know what, hell with it. I'm just going to get the books that I've been wanting from them and be done with it for the rest of the year. So I have three of the four. They sent the wrong one. The fourth one, they sent the wrong one. And so I have to call them up either today or tomorrow and chew them out and get that sorted. But the first of those LOA books is Aldo Leopold, and it's a Sand County Almanac and other writings on ecology and conservation. So if you've never read Aldo Leopold and you're at all interested in the natural world, you should really read him. He was the godfather of the wildlife management kind of field of study, really. But yeah, it's a beautiful book. It's got Canadian geese flying on it, and Kelly and I often have Canadian geese flying right over the house and honking, and I just absolutely love that. So, yeah, that's this one.
There was a whole episode with Jason and I over Boxer where I had been reading Aldo Leopold's book, A Sand County Almanac, and I added it to my bailed shelf on Goodreads because I sort of just wasn't feeling it at the time. I still want to finish it, but like Jason just saw that and sent me a Boxer where he was just like, "You bailed on the Sand County Almanac," and I responded. I was like, I just saw the like notification. Jason Cooper is talking, and I somehow knew that you were going to be talking about that. And then I reassured him that I'm going to finish it at some point. So yeah.
It's just funny. It's funny how that works. How because you had just done that, and we, us bookish people were always kind of looking at our notifications, and as soon as you did that, a couple minutes later, whatever, I was talking, and you were like, "Oh, he's got to be talking about that," and sure enough, I was. So it's funny.
Yeah. So my next book is Stars in Their Courses, the Gettysburg Campaign by Shelby Foote. So I think Jason has now a big Library of America edition of Shelby Foote.
No.
Right? Oh, okay.
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway. Never mind.
I don't even think he's in the Library of America. He should be, but I don't think he is.
Oh. Somehow I thought Shelby was a woman, even though the picture is right there. Okay, sorry.
So he is interviewed, just so you know, in Ken Burns' documentary.
Mm-hmm.
He's in it a lot, and he has the most pleasant voice you have ever heard. I mean, you're like, I mean, he's gone now; he's passed away now. But yeah, Shelby Foote is somebody that you could listen to read the phone book and just be like, just super nice. Right? Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, the history of the Gettysburg Campaign, and like I said earlier, I feel woefully underversed in the Civil War, so yeah, should be good.
So right there in the same time period with the Civil War, I got the Library of America edition of Walt Whitman, Poetry and Prose. And the reason why I got this, and Brian from Bookish, you should be aware of this, because I know you and Kelly are going to be reading Whitman this summer, and you were wondering what book to get. So the edition of Leaves of Grass to Read is the first edition. And it's difficult to know if that's the edition that's in a book or not. Well, this specific edition has his first edition of it and the deathbed or final edition of Leaves of Grass. So if you get this from a library or buy it from the LOA, you're guaranteed to have the first edition of Leaves of Grass in it. So I love that it has, that beautiful work in its first incarnation and its final incarnation in a single volume, which is super cool. And then it's got him on the cover looking a little bit like Johnny Keene, like meets Rip Van Winkle or something. Yeah. But anyhow.
Oh, cool. Yeah, this next book is another book I sort of grabbed. It's not a subject I was previously interested in, but it's called The Hopes of Snakes and Other Tales from the Urban Landscape by Lisa Couturier. I'm not sure, but anyway, this is about animals that live in like urban spaces and just their lives and how they live in the city. And yeah, I don't know. I thought that sounded kind of interesting. But if it turns out not to be interesting, then it's also not that long a book, so it won't give me too much pain. So yeah, anyway, I grabbed that a bit on a whim.
And then my last LOA book I wanted to share is Reinhold Niebuhr and his major works on religion and politics. Leaves from the Notebook of a Tamed Cynic, Moral Man and Immoral Society, The Children of Light and the Children of Darkness, The Irony of American History, and other writings. And Niebuhr is just, he was a really influential 20th century theologian, and I've never read any of his work. And he's one of these theologians, him, Paul Tillich, a couple others from the 20th century who I've just been really keen to read for quite some time now. And when I saw, it was just a year or two ago, I think, that LOA finally released this book, finally released Reinhold Niebuhr, I was super excited. And I've been wanting it for some time, so that was going to be one of the books that I bought from them this year. And that's my last book in the haul. So I will leave it to the cause. I'll still be here, but
the rest of the video will be just me, and I have quite a few to go. This next one is The Shaping of a Life, A Spiritual Landscape by Phyllis Tickle. It's a really strange last name now that I say it. But, so this is a memoir, and just sort of, it sounds very sort of typical memoir, starting in her childhood and going through her young adulthood and everything. But it tracks the development of her faith and her interest in like prayer and religion, and yeah, it's just sort of about spiritualism, I think. Again, I sort of grabbed it on a whim. I didn't know anything about Phyllis Tickle until I saw this in Kelly and Jason's closet, so I don't know that much about it, but I thought it sounded interesting, and it actually feels like it's been a while since I've read like nonfiction about religion, and like we've been talking about religion a lot the past couple days, so like it's, yeah, anyway, it's got me itching to read some things like this, so yeah. Okay. So.
You want me to hold any?
No, okay. So this next one is The Lion in the Wasteland. It's by Janice Brown. The subtitle is Fearsome Redemption in the work of C.S. Lewis, Dorothy Sayers, and T.S. Eliot. Now, I think the title is pretty self-explanatory, but I mainly grabbed it because it's about C.S. Lewis. It sounds like he's going to talk about The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which would be cool because I loved that as a kid. And it sounds like he's going to talk about T.S. Eliot, who I still love. So, and Dorothy Sayers, I think, is a mystery writer, but she also did a really well-regarded translation of the Divine Comedy, which is, but I don't know as much about her. But so yeah, I just thought it would be cool. I haven't read any like criticism about The Wasteland, or well, I've listened to like lectures about The Wasteland, which is sort of like criticism in a way. But anyway, I haven't read any criticism about The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe though, so this should be pretty interesting. Next is White Teeth by Zadie Smith, which I don't feel that much of a need to say too much about because I feel like it's a pretty well-known book on BookTube. But yeah, it's one of those books I hear about everywhere, so I get curious. So yeah, I'll read it at some point.
May you like it more than I do.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm actually, in a way, I'm a bit more interested in Zadie Smith's nonfiction than her fiction. But anyway, that'll happen. Next is Love Medicine by Louise Erdrich. Yeah, Louise Erdrich is a writer I've wanted to get to for a while because I have an interest in Native American authors that I want to act on more because I haven't been actually reading very many Native American authors, despite the fact that I tell everyone I'm interested in reading about Native Americans and books by Native Americans. So, but yeah, Louise Erdrich is a pretty famous Native American writer, and yeah, I think this is her debut novel, right?
It is,
yeah.
And it won the National Book Critics Circle Award for fiction. And she has gone on to, I mean, she's a major writer. She's been a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize for another book. She's won the National Book Award for yet another book. And I think LaRose won the National Book Critics Circle Award for fiction just a few years ago. So she's won that twice. Yeah. If the Nobel Prize for Literature ever kind of removes its head from its rear end, she would be a really good, worthy Nobel laureate, I think.
Yeah. She'd probably be the first Native American or person of Native American descent to win it.
Yeah, certainly, and probably the first one in any real serious discussion, I think. Yeah. I don't think N. Scott Momaday was ever sort of discussed for it. Yeah.
Well, anyway, from one Pulitzer Prize winner to another. This is Interpreter of Maladies by Juba Lahiri. Another, I think, book that gets talked about a lot on BookTube, but it's a short story collection about I think that about Indian immigrants, many of them, and which is interesting because we ate at an Indian restaurant today.
Yeah.
So, anyway, yeah. So there's that. Next, the last two books I really don't know much about, like the I can't remember the title. Anyway, one of the first things I grabbed them because they both take place in Wyoming. But this is The Legend of Colton H. Bryant by Alexandra Fuller, and Bolito by Allison Hagee. So yeah, just two novels set in Wyoming. And
that was nonfiction.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Alexandra Fuller's nonfiction, yeah.
Oh, cool.
And then Bolito, so Allison Hagee was my advisor when I was an undergrad in Laramie, and I actually did an independent study with her. I was in a Sharon Dubiago class, and then.
Okay, the video went on for too long, and I had to start a new one. So sorry for the jump cut. Anyway,
Yeah, Sharon Dubiago and I wanted to kill each other at one point, and so I couldn't finish the class with her. And Allison Hagee finished that class with me that semester as an independent study, poetry independent study. So she was a very good teacher and a very nice lady.
Well, it's a good thing you're here, because I clearly had nothing to say about these books. Okay, so now I'm moving on to the books that I got at the book exchange. And there are, yet again, a lot of them. So I'm going to start with the one that, the one I'm maybe most excited about, but there were a ton of individual volumes of Shakespeare plays there. A lot of Shakespeare's plays I don't own in individual volumes, and I kind of prefer to read plays in individual volumes rather than in a complete works of Shakespeare. There's just something about opening the gigantic book and the double columns, and it's oppressive.
You feel like you need a podium or something?
Yeah. So with Titus Andronicus, this is King John and Henry VIII. Which is interesting, because King John is like an early play, and then Henry VIII is like one of his last plays. So it's funny that they would include them in one volume. But anyway, we have Henry IV Part 2, and it's unfortunate that I didn't have Henry IV Part 1, but I figure I will acquire that somewhere down the line. And we have Part 1 and Part 2 of Henry VI. Again, unfortunately, did not have Part 3, but I imagine at some point down the line I will acquire it. We have Pericles, Prince of Tyre, which I don't remember liking that much, but I will reread it at some point. Twelfth Night, which I read and don't remember very much from, unfortunately. Comedy of Errors, which I read and really liked, but yeah. As You Like It, which you all know I like. Troilus and Cressida, which I like a lot. And then there's Henry VIII on its own, which I sort of bought by accident, because I didn't realize that the volume with the King John and the Henry VIII, I didn't realize that Henry VIII was in there. I thought it was just King John, but yeah, anyway, I have 2 copies of Henry VIII now. And then they had Coleridge's writings on Shakespeare. So yeah, it's just a bunch of criticism that Samuel Taylor Coleridge wrote of Shakespeare. It should be super interesting. Actually, I was thinking it would be perhaps interesting for me to try to, during ShakeTube, make a video, perhaps, about this, to have another feature as well as just talking about the plays. So, yeah. Alright, outside of Shakespeare. First is August 1914 by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who's a Russian author who I have wanted to read more of for so long. I've only read One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich, which I really liked, but just haven't gotten around to anything else. And sometime this year I hope to read the Gulag Archipelago, or at least however much of the Gulag Archipelago is included in the volume I have of it. I'm not sure that that's actually the whole thing, but anyway, I want to read that. And this is, I believe, a novel about the Russian Revolution. So yeah, should be super interesting. Next is the Virgil's Aeneid. This is the Alan Mandelbaum translation, and Steve recommended this translation as a really good one in his Western Canon Starter Kit. So, Elena Makridina and I are buddy reading the Aeneid next month. So, yeah, I will have a new translation to read for that. I read it the first time in the Rolf Humphreys translation. So, yeah, looking forward to that. Next, going back to Russia, I suppose, this is The Idiot by Fyodor Dostoevsky, which is, just one of his major works, and I've wanted to get to more Dostoevsky for ever, and now I finally can. So, yeah, and I think this is about a man who is, a man who's supposed to be perfect, or something like that. Again, I don't know that much about it, but it's by Dostoevsky, so I'm sure it's good. Okay. So, next is On God, An Uncommon Conversation, Norman Mailer with Michael Lennon. So this is like an interview. I don't really know who Michael Lennon is, but Norman Mailer obviously is a famous writer. And this is a conversation that Norman Mailer and Michael Lennon had about sort of Norman Mailer's sort of spiritual belief system, because how to have, a belief system without religion. And that just sounded fascinating and like a book that would be right up my alley, even though I haven't read any other Norman Mailer. So, yeah, that's that. this is The Assassination of Jesse James by the Coward Robert Ford by Ron Hansen. Sorry, I thought Robert Ford might be the author, and I was like, wait, why is the author called a coward? No, anyway. So Jason actually recommended this to me. Also recommended the film that is based on it. So it's about, I guess, an outlaw who sort of gets into sort of a confrontation with another outlaw or something.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's about Jesse James, and it's about the guy who killed him and how they had been friends leading up to. It's interesting, right? Like the book itself, the title of the book is telling you the ending of the book, and what's super interesting in it is it's not the killing of Jesse James, it's not the murder of Jesse James, but the fact that he calls it the assassination of Jesse James. But it has just a lot. It's a really great Western. It has a lot to say about kind of the cult of celebrity and how sort of American myths are made. And it's a tremendous novel. Ron Hansen's one of my favorite writers, and the movie that it's based on. I told Akash that the movie watches like a Western directed by Terrence Malick. The guy who did direct it, Andrew Dominic, is kind of a disciple of Malick's. So
cool. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. All right. Next is Who Needs God by Harold Kushner. So this again is sort of a book about religion and why we should be spiritual. I think it's supposed to be directed at both religious people and non-religious people. But yeah, it just sounds like it's about sort of the purpose of religion and what religion does for people and that sort of thing. And again, that sort of thing is right up my alley. And like I said, I've sort of got an itch to read more books about religion because I haven't been doing as much of that for a while. So yeah, there's that. And another book by Harold Kushner I got is When Bad Things Happen to Good People, which is a pretty self-explanatory title. But yeah, he talks about sort of the problem of theodicy with why do righteous people suffer and things of that sort. I know there's a chapter on the Book of Job in here. Yeah, so anyway, these are both very short and should be very interesting. Actually, I think Harold Kushner, I think, also wrote a book, like a bigger book, that I think it is entitled, like, How to Read the Bible or something. But it's, like, all about, like, interpreting the Bible and things like that. And it probably talks about, like, Midrash, like what you were talking about.
Yeah.
But, yeah, anyway, so Harold Kushner. Oh, yeah, I guess Harold Kushner is a rabbi. I guess that's important information. So he sort of has some, spiritual authority.
He's familiar with what he's talking about.
Yeah. This next book is The Last Temptation of Christ by Nikos Kazantzakis, which I first learned about on Neil Griffith's channel because it's a book that he said he would want to read on his deathbed. And as I understand it, it's about Jesus Christ. It's like a life of Jesus Christ, imagining him like if he were a real person, and like if you were a real person called to do what happens to Jesus in the Gospels. Yeah, just tells that story, and was very controversial from what I heard. Like the like Greek Orthodox Church like denounced it or something, because I think Kazantzakis I think is Greek, and but yeah. Anyway.
Well, and I think the details are fuzzy for me, but I'm more familiar with the controversy surrounding the film. But the book's controversy resulted in, I think when he died, I think the church denied him a burial. I think that he was buried without rites or something.
Wow.
Yeah, because they were so kind of affronted by the book. And I may be getting parts of that wrong, but if I remember correctly, that's kind of how the controversy around the novel sort of ended.
Yeah. Anyway, Last Temptation of Christ.
It's a great book.
Yeah. Next is a guy who has been much talked about on BookTube lately. It's All the Pretty Horses by Cormac McCarthy. And I feel like this is becoming a common theme. I don't actually know much about this book, but I think it's about young, like, teenage boy who's a rancher or something. Who likes horses.
Yeah, well, it's about two young friends who decide to kind of set out for Mexico, and and it's set in, I want to say, like early to mid 20th century. So it's a Western, but it's not a Western in the kind of proper sense of the word. And it's a beautiful book, man. Like it is just a beautiful book. And there may always be this war on BookTube over Cormac McCarthy, but I plan to make myself a general in this war. And I think it's the prose in that is gorgeous. So
it's a good thing you're here, or else they would have very little to hear about these books I'm on. Clearly, I don't actually know much about very many. Next is Don't Know Much About the Bible by Kenneth Davis. And the subtitle is Everything You Need to Know About the Good Book But Never Learned. Yeah, I've read a book by Kenneth Davis. It was like I think it was entitled something like 9 Stories from the 1800s You've Probably Never Heard, or 9 Stories from American History You've Probably Never Heard, or something. And it was just, his sort of narrative history of a bunch of several different episodes in American history in the 1800s. And I liked that book a lot. It read very easily. And like Jason was saying in his latest video and was talking about earlier today, we all need to be more biblically literate, and I figure this isn't exactly the most scholarly place to begin, but it might be a lot of fun. But yeah, that should be super interesting. And it's a nice big book. It's not a mammoth. It's like 500 pages, but yeah. Okay. Next was a really good find. This is The Major Works of Samuel Johnson, Oxford World's Classics editions, and yeah, this just has a really generous selection of his essays, which is what I'm most interested in, but it also has letters, a bunch of his poems, which I'm actually not that interested in his poetry, but I might read it at some point. But anyway, I'm mostly interested in the essays and his letters, just because I read the Johnson Reader, which is another volume and I just like them a lot. They're just really well written, really witty, and just enjoyable, and all quite short, so like you can enjoy them in sort of small bits and pieces. And I think this also includes some of his lives of poets, I believe, too. And like his preface to Shakespeare is in here. His preface to the Dictionary of the English Language is in here. Yeah, his life of Cowley, his life of Addison, life of Milton. So yeah. Anyway, it was a really good find.
Oh, we forgot to wear our hats.
Oh gosh.
Mine's out in the car, so here. You can put on the small one, yeah.
I used to have a hat like this, actually. Oh no, I still have a hat like this. I should have just brought that.
It's good.
What's wrong with me?
I can't believe I forgot mine out in the car.
Yeah. Okay, well, hello. I have a hat now. And here's a Shakespeare play I forgot, The Winter's Tale. Just a Dover Thrift edition. Next is a man I've been talking about a little bit. It's Thomas Mann. This is his novel Buddenbrooks, which from what I understand it is like a really a family saga of many generations, which is something I really love. And I also love Thomas Mann, so I will give this a read at some point. Okay, we're in the home stretch.
Yes, the last stack.
Yeah. So this is The Acts of King Arthur and His Noble Knights by John Steinbeck, and it's his sort of telling of the Arthurian legends, which should be right up my alley, because I really like the Arthurian legends.
It's really a pretty cover.
Yeah, it's a lovely edition with sort of a painting in there. I don't even know if you can see that, but so that should be fun. And it's also kind of, I guess for me, kind of fun because it's like this sort of a lesser known work of John Steinbeck. I feel like I don't think most people would know that he wrote like a collection of Arthurian legends. So it's just, I don't know, it makes me feel like a cool hipster who's getting into the lesser known works of John Steinbeck. This next one is a View with a Grain of Sand by Wisława Szymborska. She's a Nobel Prize winning Polish poet. I had a volume of her poems. I think it was her collected poems. I had it a few years ago and stupidly got rid of it because I was dumb. Because I loved her poems, and I was glad to find this. And she's a really easy poet to read, so it's kind of refreshing to go from T.S. Eliot and like Wallace Stevens to just Szymborska. Yeah. Anyway. And the last two. This is The Song of the Lark by Willa Cather. Which Jason tipped me off to because it is about a young woman who wants to become an opera singer, which sounds super cool because I like opera. So, and then finally, a collection of plays by Jean-Paul Sartre, No Exit, and 3 other plays. And No Exit sounded, I think actually Jen of Insert Literary Pun talked about No Exit. It's about, I think, 3 men who are damned to hell. And what hell is
other people
being with 2 other people who irritate you. Yeah, so that sounds really cool. And there were 3 other plays, so yeah. Okay. That is everything.
That was all the books.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you for coming onto my channel, Jason. Thank you for having me in your home.
Of course.
And, yeah, anyway. So, that's all. Thank you all for watching. And, as always, I always forget to say this till the last minute, but if anyone has read any of these, then give us your comments. We're happy to hear. And, I will not be listing every single title in the description because obvious reasons. Anyway, we will sign off now. Goodbye, guys.